This is the time to stand up now. We can't carry on like this. This is the time to stand up now. We can't carry on like this. This is the time to stand up now. We can't carry on like this. This is the time to stand up now. We can't carry on like this.
Good evening. I felt it'd be easier doing it like this rather than fielding call after call and message after message. Thank you very, very much for all of you who've reached out to me and contacted me and passed on your well wishes and your concerns and your offers for help. I'm grateful. I think this week even though I spent 3 hours on Sunday night, I hadn't realised what would follow from what took place. It appears that the malicious blogger and proven liar NIEL WILBY is continuing his campaign of harassment and intimidation. Apparently it's the beginning of the end, and I'd been banned off Facebook, and I'd been taken off Facebook, and I've been reported to YouTube now, where I share my transmissions. I find it bizarre that a so-called journalist is so keen to censor my voice and stop me from sharing what I am sharing. I find it troubling. I shared with you on Sunday a number of worrying responses from Greater Manchester Police, specifically Detective Inspector Kenny Blain. Now, Kenny Blain first came to my attention in this way when I reported a list of crimes, and I considered them to be crimes, a list of crimes, and first and foremost was the sale of Glodic baths. Now, we know, regardless of what Kenny Blain suggests, the Freedom of Information records, all the council's own documents prove that the council sold Glodic baths days before an election during Purdah. The council's own documents prove that. And the paper trail goes back, and it shows that the deputy leader of the council now, who was at the time a candidate in the election, the Labour Party candidate in the election, Arud Shah, had already declared a prejudicial interest with the organisation who bought Glodic baths. The Ghazali Trust bought Glodic baths for a measly £75,000. And the sale was forced through in the lead up to the election. The Ghazali Trust had already declared how powerful they were in the community. You don't have to take my word or my interpretation for it. And it doesn't matter what Detective Inspector Kenny Blain claims. This, in 2016, the local elections, the council attempted to rig an election. I say this with sincerity, I say this with honesty, and actually I say this with reluctance. I've spent parts of my life working in places where democracy is an irrelevance, and I've seen the consequences of that. I never thought I'd see it in my own town, where a council was involved in attempting to rig an election. Because that's what the sale of a public asset days before an election is, to an organisation who the candidate has a declared interest with, and the organisation also promotes how powerful they are in the community. Detective Inspector Kenny Blain has attempted to quash this investigation, just as he quashed the investigation into Sean Fielding. Multiple victims, respected victims, contacted the police, and Kenny Blain sat on it. And what Kenny Blain did was refused to interview any of the witnesses, refused to interview Sean Fielding or anyone at the council, and then sat on it for months and months, and then said it hadn't reached the threshold to be passed on to the CPS. It is another blatant cover-up. And then what this man did was he also wrote to Debbie Cole after Debbie had gone to the police pleading for help. This is a woman who had been threatened with kidnap and rape. Debbie Cole has had to flee for her life. Kenny Blain wrote back to her, said there was nothing to see here, and made reference to himself as the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper of what? I'm not quite sure, but he described himself as the gatekeeper. Kenny Blain wrote to me last week with a series of, in an email, I think it was 4, 5, 6 months maybe, I'd gone to him beforehand, And I knew what I was going to get. But even though I got it, it surprised me. It shocked me. And in the end, one of the things he came back to me with was that he had decided not to even interview NIEL WILBY and his sidekick EUAN STEWART. And both NIEL WILBY and EUAN STEWART had been involved in a malicious, hate-filled, fueled campaign where they had both fabricated this entire backstory that somehow I was a police informant, a narc, a snitch, a roof. Every acronym you can imagine for someone who supplies the police with intelligence so they can go out and arrest drug dealers or underworld figures, and somehow I was this police informant. Now I'll share with you towards the end the content of what D.I. Blain shared with me, and you can decide for yourself how honest this police officer is, how capable this police officer is, or whether you agree with me that this police officer is actually corrupt. I, throughout the last 2 years, have been extremely passionate about the safety and safeguarding of children in my town. And then what emerged as a subsequent deep-rooted level of corruption. And for reasons only known to him, NIEL WILBY, EUAN STEWART and a number of others have decided to target me. Now, I am a law-abiding citizen, regardless of what they might say and the fakery and the lies that they've spread about me. I am not a convicted criminal. And the one time where I was questioned under caution, voluntarily attending a police station, it later emerged that the MP Debbie Abrahams, who had gone to the police station with a dossier of evidence, had doctored the evidence in an attempt to incriminate me. When my solicitor and I pointed this out, the interview quickly ended, though I had to wait months before I got a letter confirming that the matter was over and I would be facing no criminal charges. I had not broken the law. I did not break the law. I am a law-abiding citizen. If I was like any of these people who are behaving the way they are towards me, as a consequence of what I've found out today, I would be round the house of the person who has threatened me and my family, and I'd be dragging him out of his door and smashing his head in the street. But I'm not that sort of person. I believe in democracy, and I believe in the rule of law. I am just astonished that in the 21st century, in this day and age, in Greater Manchester, we would see the level of police corruption that we are witnessing. Let me show you. This account, UPSDGMP, is NIEL WILBY's account. It's well known to be NIEL WILBY's account. There's no ambiguity there. He admits it's his account. He can be often found talking to himself. And you can see he's tagged in EUAN STEWART and 42 others. He starts off by claiming that somehow I'm involved in an inside job engineered where a pig's head was thrown through Kaiser Raymond's window. Widely believed. Complete fabrication, complete lie. No one has ever accused me of anything of the sort. Here's a picture of me in my late 20s, early 30s, I think. Again, NIEL WILBY. Which leads us to the other persistent rumour. Do you see? Persistent rumour dating back years. that Raja Mia is a police narc. Apparently what I do is far worse than which Irish Imi was convicted. So there is no doubt Irish Imi is a convicted heroin dealer. Irish Imi drove Dale Cregan away from the scene of one murder to a place where we could plan and regroup and commit another 2 murders, 2 police women in our town. I'm not sure where that parallel comes from. But the other persistent rumour, according to this man, dating back years. Again, complete fabrication. Complete fabrication. EUAN Stewart, tag teams with him. This man is from Didsbury. Wilby's from somewhere in Huddersfield. Neither of any role in our town. As posted by others elsewhere, there's a strong possibility that is in fact Mr. Mia that has the protection of local police on account of him allegedly being a police informant. Eliza Jane asked him, who are the others elsewhere? There has to be another reason why this man has seemingly immunity from prosecution. The suggestion is clear. I am a police informant. Here he is claiming I've dobbed in Kaiser Raymond. I don't know any criminality Kaiser Raymond is involved in. If at all he's involved in any criminality, not to my knowledge. So I'm not sure why or what I would dob him in for. But again, you can see the term dob him in and what that means. I'm a police informant. You will see at the top in both of these quotes, old race bikes. NIEL WILBY is replying to a guy called Old Race Bikes and 9 others. Again, Old Race Bikes and 9 others. The man from Mosley has grassed up Kaiser Raymond. Grassed up, again. Suggest, implies, it's clear, based upon his previous quotes, tweets, that I am a narc, a police informant. I ask you yet again, he's asking a police officer. Strong suspicion is Raja Mia has a roof. That means someone who protects me in the police. Police informants have roofs. Shocking though the harassment has been for the principals involved, that horror has been matched by the complete inaction by Q Division of Greater Manchester Police, who appear to operate in terror of or in tandem with Raja Mia. I have my own well-developed theory about that. You've all seen what his own well-developed theory is. It's that I am a police informant, a narc, a snitch. Apparently I belong to a coordinated group of agitators led by Mia and a racist far-right Twitter account, Oldham. How Raja Mia can be allowed to continuously pump out his divisive narrative simply beggars belief. Apparently I'm proven beyond any doubt to be a persistent, mendacious liar. by repeating reference to facts and evidence, not bias. I re-released the document this morning that comprehensively evidences the sale of Glodic baths was unlawful and it was an attempt by the council to rig an election. I'm happy to stand in court and defend that position to a judge or a jury, and I am convinced that they will agree with me. Here's Jim McMahon directly engaging with NIEL WILBY. Remember, NIEL WILBY is a proven liar and a malicious blogger, as described by a High Court judge. The list of new accounts. Everyone knows I don't work behind fake accounts. Nor am I orchestrating anything, Jim McMahon. McMahon refuses to comment on his involvement in using the funeral of Lee Rigby to cover up news of grooming gangs, as he now also refuses to comment on what he knew about the cover-up of child abuse at Failsworth School. And the grooming gangs that I'm supposed to have fabricated, the council have their own dossier of evidence where all of this was reported. Victim after victim has gone to the police in the past, and there's a folder after folder. And we found out last week that the police themselves have had to launch a new unit and have already identified the best part of 900 members of the grooming gangs. Wilby, in his latest article, beginning of the end or something that people have repeatedly sent me, and I struggle, I apologise, I struggle with his articles. I've asked my friends not to send them me. And I know all of you are concerned, but they're deeply painful, they're deeply hateful, and I am at a loss at what I can do about this man and those who have gathered round him. But in his latest article, and I think Paul Boots Erock sent it me not long ago, apparently my MBE is being taken away from me, or he suggests that my MBE is about to be taken away from me. And he has a link in his article. The link in his article only takes you to a government page, but you'd have to click that link to work that out. This divisive, hate-filled narrative that I'm supposed to be perpetuating, orchestrating, leading. The MBE I got was for services to my country of building and strengthening communities, particularly in terms of protecting children and young people. People can take that away from me if they want. It makes no difference to me. Twitter accepted that NIEL WILBY's comments violated their rules on abuse and harassment multiple times. Wilby's perpetuating this thing that I've been taken off Facebook, by the way. You can see I've not been taken off Facebook, and he's also perpetuating this thing I've been reported to Google for YouTube, because apparently they want to take me off YouTube because of what I do on YouTube. This is what was contained in the response from Detective Inspector Kenny Blain. He acknowledges that the evidence shows, because I submitted a dossier of evidence, that Wilby and Stewart have referenced me as a police informant using words such as narc, snitch, police informant. Wilby has also posted comments suggesting you had a roof, providing you with immunity. Apparently, according to Detective Inspector Kenny Blain, because I have openly referenced contacts I have within the police service throughout my time, that this could be somehow construed as making what Wilby says true. Now I do not hide, nor will I hide. I have friends of mine who are police officers. And from the best part of 30 years of public service, I have sat in rooms with police officers of all ranks. In a past life, I even worked with Cressida Dick. I sat in the same room as her on a government committee. Detective Inspector Kenny Blain, without speaking to either of these people, claims the comments are not grossly offensive, nor are they a threat. Senior police officers have told me themselves that being referred to as a police informant, a snitch, a narc, having a roof in the police that protects me from immunity, these terms do in fact place my life at risk. Police officers themselves do not even know who police informants are. They are protected in such a way, because if any news got out of who was or was not a police informant, then the gangsters would come after them. But Detective Inspector Blain has decided that this is not the case, and that these comments are not grossly offensive, nor are they a threat. This is where the Detective Inspector does his peers a complete disservice. This is where he demonstrates why so many police officers are leaving the police force and why Greater Manchester Police is in special measures. According to him, the term informant and other similar references in the post can be interpreted differently depending on how you view them. Someone who contacts the police in any overt capacity could be classed as a police informant. What that means is if I report a crime to the police, I could be classed as a police informant. Detective Inspector Kenny Blain is talking absolute nonsense. And there is not a single police officer who is watching this who will come to any other conclusion. The term informant can be interpreted differently depending on how you view it. He is attempting to cover up for Wilby and EUAN Stewart. And he refuses to send it to the CPS because he does not believe that proving this case to the evidential standard required is achievable on the evidence available. As he has done before, Detective Inspector Kenny Blain has refused and failed to interview either of the suspects. So Wilby and Stewart have not been asked what they meant by describing me as a police informant, a narc, a roof, a snitch, someone who dobs people in, a grass. And instead, Detective Inspector Kenny Blain has come to his own conclusion of what this term might mean so that he can avoid the investigation. Once again, I am a law-abiding citizen. I believe in the rule of law, and all of you who have followed me for the last 2 years will know that I've been asking for all of you, or more of you, to exercise your democratic duty and vote. That's all I've been doing. And they want to silence me. And now, NIEL WILBY and EUAN STEWART are protected by Detective Inspector Kenny Blain. The same Kenny Blain that protected Sean Fielding, and the same Kenny Blain that ignored the plea for help from Debbie Barratt-Cole, and the same Detective Inspector Kenny Blain that has made his own version of reality around the corrupt, unlawful sale of Glodic baths during Purdah. It's comparable to a speeding fine. You were doing 150 miles an hour on the motorway. It's as simple as that. And that's what happened with Glodic baths. They sold a building at a date and time when it was unlawful to do so, at a knockdown discount price to an organisation who had the means and ability to influence voters, and who also had a declared relationship with one of the candidates. That is unlawful. That is a council rigging an election. Do you see why they want to take me off? I've got a few other posts to show you. Sorry, you'll have to bear with me. As a consequence of being referenced as a police narc and a police informant, and multiple police officers telling me of the dangers of such an allegation, that Detective Inspector Kenny Blain refuses to accept is a threat, but others in the police force are very clear it is. You'll remember NIEL WILBY tagging in a Twitter handle called Old Race Bikes. This is Old Race Bikes' Twitter handle. That is my front door to where I live, keeping watch. They are directing gangsters to come and kill me. The police are sat on their hands watching, encouraging gangsters who have been told by journalists that I am a narc, a snitch. They've tagged in this account, and what this account has done is put a picture up of my front door with a tag underneath saying keeping watch. Rusty Wheels and Councillor Sean Fielding have a clear relationship. So you've got a councillor, the leader of Oldham Council, directly, and he's linked to, Sean Fielding is linked, openly endorsed, engaged with NIEL WILBY. He is also openly involved and engaged with this Old Rusty Wheels, or Old Race Wheels, or whatever it's called. Old Race Bikes. So here you have the leader of Oldham Council, openly engaged with a malicious blogger and proven liar, the same as Sean Fielding, the MP for the town, openly involved and engaged with this man, who has called me a snitch, a narc, a police officer who believes that there may be other explanations as to what that term means. And then, black and white, the common denominator, old Ray Spikes, Sean Fielding and Wilby all connected together, and old Ray Spikes is putting up pictures of my front door. Just let that sink in for a moment. The MP for this town, Shadow Cabinet Minister for Transport, Keir Starmer's Shadow Cabinet Minister for Transport, is engaged with a man who is attempting to direct gangsters to come and kill me. The leader of Oldham Council, Sean Fielding, is engaged and promoting this man. He even name-checked him at a council meeting. Both Wilby and Sean Fielding are directly linked to this old race bikes account. And this account has put up a picture of my front door. The police are a disgrace, and the consequence of the actions of Detective Inspector Kenny Blain is that I sleep with a knife in my bed and a knife beside my front door. I genuinely fear that someone is going to get hurt. I genuinely fear that someone is going to get killed. Because I, like anyone else who has a young family, will do whatever I need to protect those that I love. The leader of Oldham Council, the MP, multiple other politicians, Labour politicians, have all been encouraging Wilby. And now one of their other associates puts up a picture of my front door. And Detective Inspector Kenny Blain would have you all believe that being referenced to as a narc, a police informant, and all of these other terms does not place my life at risk. How would Detective Inspector Kenny Blain like it, and I don't know him well enough, if he had children and I went and took pictures of his kids and put them on and said, this is the school that Kenny Blain's children go to? I'd expect to be arrested, and rightly so. Now, a number of you have contacted me with the name of old Ray Spikes. We know who Rusty Wheel is. We know where he works. Within the next 24 hours, it is likely that I will know where he lives. Once again, my plea to Greater Manchester Police is to do your job, arrest Sean Fielding, investigate the rigged election, interview NIEL WILBY and EUAN STEWART, and put an end to this nonsense that somehow I am a police informant, because the consequences are, if the police don't protect me, I will have to protect myself. Thank you, Denise. Thank you to all of you. If I seem quieter than usual, it's because I'm genuinely in shock. After repeatedly implying that it's a well-known rumour, a long-established rumour, that I'm a police narc, emboldened by the active support of Fielding and McMahon, one of their other mates has come along and posted a picture of my front door. How am I supposed to take this, keeping watch? Truth or consequences? How am I supposed to interpret this, if not a death threat? Their attempts to silence me will continue, and I genuinely do not believe I will be alive to see the end of where we end up and our town being reclaimed. The government know what's taking place in Oldham. The Labour Party know what's taking place in Oldham. And I honestly feel it'll take a murder before anyone pays any attention.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.